The director of Castaway and Forrest Gump returns to us finally with not one creepy, dead-eyed animated character in sight. Hello and welcome to my review of Flight, starring Denzel Washington, John Goodman, Don Cheadle, and Kelly Riley. Flight centers on Whip Whitaker, played by Denzel Washington, an airline pilot who, on a seemingly routine flight from Florida to Georgia, achieves a miraculous crash landing that manages to save most of the people on board, even though this plane crash is just brutal and in any other circumstance would have killed everybody on board. Now, normally he could just go the Captain Sully route and become a national hero and all that. Only problem is that he's a serial alcoholic, and on the day of the flight had some cocaine in him and some alcohol in his system. Now, this film not only stars Denzel Washington, who's just one of the best actors in the business, but it also does mark the return of director Robert Zemeckis, a brilliant filmmaker, to live-action filmmaking. So it is safe to say that my expectations flew sky high. Ha 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 ha! See, the voices in my head laugh at my jokes. I wasn't supposed to tell you about that, was I? Moving on. So, did the film live up to these high and apparently insanity-causing expectations? Not quite, but I'm not disappointed. It actually turned out to be a pretty solid flick. The anchor point to this movie, no doubt, bar none, is just the wonderful performance by Denzel Washington in this film. This is a character that easily in another actor's hands could have been portrayed a little over the top, but what's so wonderful about Denzel Washington is that no matter what role he plays, whether it's likable or unlikable, and in this case it's a pretty unlikable character considering he's a serial alcoholic who's incredibly self-destructive to himself and others, he always gives the character a great human, down-to-earth feel to where even if this guy is really hurting the people around him, you root for the guy because Denzel Washington is just so natural and charismatic on screen. He's one of the few actors to where you can sit there for this extended period of time because don't make no mistake, this is a long movie. This is a 2-hour and 18-minute movie about an alcoholic. And yet the whole time you're just glued to the screen because despite everything in your power, you like this guy. The supporting cast, which includes Don Cheadle, John Goodman, Bruce Greenwood, and Kelly Riley, all give solid performances, but at the same time, they're not spectacular. They're very much supporting roles in this film. There's no really standout roles besides Denzel, but they serve their purpose pretty well. One of the things that really worked for this movie was how much of a character piece it was. Just the fact that in the trailers they may have you believe that this is a movie where half the time is spent going, oh, what happened with the plane? Did he have alcohol in his system? Like dissecting the whole crash. And that's really not what this movie is. This is a very down-to-earth, dark character piece where you really get to know Denzel Washington's character and his addiction, his relationships with other people, and you just get to watch him grow and allow these horrific circumstances of the crash to kind of fuel his reaction and his way he goes through his life. And it's just fascinating, not only because of Washington's performance, but because the screenwriting is pretty good as well. I love the fact that there are no black and white, good and bad people in this movie. They're just people. They all make mistakes, and this movie really plays with the theme of whether an extraordinary good deed makes up for a lifetime of bad deeds. And I love the dynamics between these characters as they level with the reality of what's happened to them. Also, I gotta say, Robert Zemeckis hasn't lost any of his charm behind the camera. He really works with the actors well and shoots the thing beautifully, but where he really gets to show off is during the opening 15 minutes with this incredible plane crash scene that's one of the most intense sequences in a movie this year by far. It's got this just great build-up, beautiful cinematography where you really get the visceral sense of everything going on, not only in the cockpit and in the passenger seats, but also outside the plane, where you get to see just how cataclysmic this plane crash is. It's like a thrill ride at Universal or something. It is absolutely intense, and you'll be holding onto the armrest like bracing for impact yourself, and that's how you know that someone's filmed a good action scene. I have two major issues with this movie. Firstly, I feel like it definitely could have been trimmed, despite the fact that I love that it was a character piece and that we spent a lot of time with Denzel Washington. I do feel like it could have been trimmed just a little to make the thing feel a little bit more compact. And also, I feel like there was never an emotional high in this movie. Like, there was definitely a visceral high, but there's never that emotional punch that most of these movies have to where that's the scene where you just really get invested. This movie kind of stays in neutral most of the time. And don't get me wrong, neutral's fine in this movie, but I just wish there had been that one scene to really push it over the edge. Overall, while this movie just hovers under being great, it still is very good at being good. It's a solid return to form for Robert Zemeckis, and Denzel Washington gives a nomination-worthy performance in the movie. It's a solid film, and I give it 3 stars out of 4. And that was my review of Flight. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe to my channel, and until next time, I'm Movie Kid Mike.